In a southern province of the Nansir Empire, an Enrithi priest called Fain was convicted as a heretic and cast out into the desert to perish according to local custom. Surviving against all odds, the man went blind instead and experienced a series of revelations, bearing a miraculous power he called the Water of Endara. Fain spent the rest of his days preaching across the arid lowlands. His followers ritually blinded themselves to perform the same miracles. These Sisharam, Endara's water-bearers, became the priests of a new religion that spread like wildfire after Fain's passing. Previously anonymous desert tribes were afflicted with an unconquerable conviction. They spread their heretical monotheistic truths at sword point through the lands once held by Nansir and Nilnemesh. Kine by ethnicity and Fanim by faith, zealous adherents of the solitary god would grow and prosper over the course of 4 centuries, waging 2 holy wars to become the dominant power in the 3 seas. None could stand against these fanatical warriors, buoyed by the power and zeal of their sorcerer priests. They were contemptuous of Enrithi and Kionot unbelievers, who bowed before 100 little demons which they called gods. None of these idolaters had the strength of conviction necessary to truly contest the word of the prophet Fain. Until now. A song as old as the ancient North is taken up by the men of the Tusk. 1,000 voices become one. A warring we have come, a reaving we shall work, and when the day is done, in our eyes the gods shall lurk. Saubon, Gothyelk, and other ranking nobles confer one final time before dispersing along the line. The Kianin draw closer, the morning sun shimmering off their battle caps. The Agmundermen, hailing from the marshes of the distant northeast, are first to step forward, hoisting longbows towards the heavens. When they loose, the very sky is darkened with arrows. Cavalrymen from both sides advance, lowering lances. Earl Gothyelk yells, "Heaven wills it," as he leads the charge. Hands draw sword and axe. Everywhere figures grapple and hack. Horses rear, blades pitch blood into the sky. And the Kianin fall, undone by their ferocity, crumbling beneath northern hands, dying beneath pale faces and merciless blue eyes. The heathens recoil from the slaughter and flee. The Enrithi pursue, spurring warhorses forward. Death comes swirling down. The enraptured Enrithi give chase, spurring warhorses forward, but their enemy is too fleet, too agile to truly break. The Fanim shoot from the saddle as they flee, felling horses and forcing knights to fight on foot. When enough Enrithi have been unsaddled, the flight becomes a counterattack. The Fanim charge at and around the beleaguered northerners, felling them one by lance and arrow. Death comes swirling down. Earl Gothyelk himself falls, his sons roaring fury in the morning air. Weregin Greatheart rallies his Tidoni and rides to the old man's aid, scattering his assailants. Yalgroda Shrunkhammer beheads a horse with a single blow. Beset on all sides, the men of the Tusk die by the hundreds, taken in the back by lances, jerked by hooks from their saddles and ridden down. Norsirai voices cry out to their wives, their gods. Through the din they hear the distant sound of horns, signaling retreat. But there is nowhere to go. The fleet Fanim riders have them encircled, their war drums pounding, pounding, pounding. At long last, the Shriel Knights rush in to relieve their Norsirai allies, offering an avenue of retreat. The Northerners take this chance and make a break for the safety of the infantry line. Their leader, Saubon, has somehow made it through alive, but is incensed by the ignominious retreat. "We had them, he shouts. "You had nothing, fool, nothing," replies Goshen, the commander of the Shriel Knights. "You knew the rule. When you break them, return to the line. Unlike most, Goshen has faced the heathen in combat many times before. The Kine are too nimble, too pliable on the field, too fierce to truly break. When you charge to bleed them, not to rout them. His battle fury subsiding, Saon realizes that the older man is correct. He was very nearly lured into a devastating blunder. "I've doomed us," he mutters. "Gather your wits, man," Goshen roars. "You must rally these men." So, Coithus Saon, seventh son of the king of Galeoth, hollers for another horse. The battle continues. Great tides of Fanim lancers, countless thousands of them, crash into the Enrithi line, and are stopped dead. Galeoth and Tidoni pikemen gut their horses. Tattooed Nangales from Che Tidon's northern marshes cudgel the fallen in the mud. Agmundermen punch arrows through shields and corslets with their deadly yew-bows. But the Fanim find none so fearsome as the flaxen-haired Thunieri, whose great shields seem like walls of stone, whose two-handed axes and broadswords can split iron-armored men to the heart. Gradually, the swift Kine riders learn how resilient the heavily armored invaders truly are. They must charge and charge again at the tightly packed formations of Enrithi pikemen, hoping for a single weak link, a single chance to break their line and turn the tide of battle. Crown Prince Finael, son and heir to the Pataraja of Kine, leads elite cavalrymen into another charge. The Enrithi infantry begins to falter, until Tidoni knights ride out once more to relieve them. Hours pass in relentless butchery, each side testing the resolve of the other, until every shield is quilled with arrows, and thousands of bodies lie strewn across the Plains of Mengedda. At long last, the Fanim withdraw to regroup, having failed to decisively break through their foe's battle line. Relieved, the Enrithi shout jeers and curses at the retreating horsemen. But then, they fall silent while watching them slowly reassemble. Sunlight flashes across spiked helmets. Broad sleeves flutter in the wind. The war drums stop pounding as Scarus Abnalajan, Sapatisha governor of Shigek, rides out to challenge the Enrithi. Wild-eyed barbarians from the north, who have spilled into his lands, eager to conquer, profane and violate. The Nansir know this cunning old man as Sutis Sutadra, the southern jackal. For decades he has vexed them in countless border skirmishes. Now he reigns to a stop before their battle line, and starts haranguing them in a language very few understand. Coithus Saon bellows, offering 50 gold talents to the archer who kills, and 10 to the one who wounds the Sapatisha. Agmundermen test the wind, but only feather the ground near the old man's magnificent white horse. He sits there, unmoved and unafraid. Facing the Enrithi, Scarus Abnalajan pulls a knife from his crimson girdle and begins paring his nails. The Fanim roar with laughter, beating their round shields with sun-flashing scimitars. The very earth seems to shiver, so ferocious is the din. Then, Scarus raises a hand and the drums resume their implacable throbbing. The Fanim advance again, the Enrithi butting pikes and squaring shields. The argument continues. 2 races, 2 faiths, willing murder across the battle plain of Mengedda. Curved scimitars crack helms, snap collarbones through iron mail. Maddened horses crash through rank and shield. More and more waves of horsemen resolve from the dust, leaping through the ravine, pounding over the dead, lancing into the staggered footmen. There is no time for tactics or prayer, only the desperate scramble to kill and live. Back in the saddle and trying with all his might to keep the line from breaking. Coithus Saon roars, God wills it. He has slain more than he can count. The remaining Fanim hesitate before his fury. Craven, The Prince of Galioth shouts at his foes just as his horse rears and stumbles. Tossed to the earth, Saon feels a blow against his helm, sending him face first into the ground. He reaches out with his bare left hand and grabs another hand. Cold, heavily calloused, leathery fingers and glass nails. A dead hand. Across the matted grasses he stares at the dead man's face. An Enrithi, features flattened against the ground, partially sheathed in blood. The man had lost his helm, and sandy blonde hair juts from his mail hood. Saon feels so heavy, so stationary, like more ground. A nightmarish moment of recognition, too surreal to be terrifying. It is his face, his own hand he holds. He tries to scream. Nothing. Suddenly, arms hoist Saon back up to his feet. He stares numbly at the bare turf, at the site where a moment before his own corpse had lain. This ground is cursed. Then Kusalt is at his side, the old groom who was once like a father to him. "My prince, you've stemmed the breach," Kusalt says, his eyes strange with wonder and pride. Once more the Enrithi battle line has survived. But in the aftermath of his strange vision, Saon is overcome with inexplicable cruelty. "You are old and slow. Give me your horse." The groom blinks, lips tightening. "This is no place to be thin-skinned, you old fool. Now give me your fucking horse." Kusalt suddenly jerks and falls to the ground, an arrow jutting from the small of his back. Saon kneels beside him as the dying man coughs blood and laughs. "I would have you know," the old man wheezes, "how much I hated you." Kusalt, the only man to ever show him love, breathes his last. Saon is left puzzled. This ground is cursed, he thinks again. He never hated me. How could he? He was the only one who... Funny joke. Haha, you old fool. Someone screams, "Sisharam." Goshen is by his side, trying desperately to rouse the prince back to attention. "Saon, the Sisharam." Suddenly, the voice of Anasarimbor Kellis goes through his mind. "Make sure they are punished. Punish them. Yes. Punish the Shriel Knights. Charge them," Saon orders while hugging his dead groom. "You must charge the Sisharam." 14 men walk towards the Enrithi line, blind and bald, with asps around their necks. They are Indara's water-bearers, oases among men, their breath more precious than the breath of thousands. The panicked Northmen launch volley after volley of arrows at the sorcerer priests, yet their shafts burst into puffs of flame. Undaunted, the Sisharam sweep their gouged eyes across the enemy line, causing bursts of blinding light among the idolaters, blistering skin, charring hearts. Devastated, the Enrithi battle line begins to break. Then, Cherai Goshen and 4,000 of his Shriel Knights ride straight into the scouring blue flood emanating from the blind men. They charge, and they die, burning, like moths assailing coals in a fire's heart. Brains boil in skulls, horses scream. Scorching light engulfs everything. But then, a lone rider sweeps into one of the sorcerer priests and takes his head. The young knight's mount erupts in flames, and yet he is unharmed, for bound within his palm is a kore, a tear of God. Those few of the Shriel Knights equipped with kore make it through the onslaught that has slain thousands in seconds. Unscathed, they cut down the Sisharam where they stand. For an impossible moment, all is silent. The surviving Shriel Knights limp and stagger back to the battered ranks of their Enrithi brothers. Goshen is among the last to reach safety, bearing a burnt youth slumped across his shoulders. In the distance, Scarus tries to rally his men for one last charge, for he knows that the Sisharam have accomplished their task even as they fell. tearing a massive gap in the Enrithi line. But the shock of what they had just witnessed weighs heavily on the Fanim. Instead of charging, they mill about in confusion and uncertainty, and then it is too late. The men of the Tusk slowly reassemble their line, resuming their ancient paean. A warring we have come, a reaving we shall work, and when the day is done, in our eyes the gods shall lurk. Still they stand, resolute and murderous, while their enemy's conviction visibly falters. Scarus has already sounded the retreat by the time the banners of Nersai Proyas and his silver-masked Conrians appear on the horizon. The emboldened Enrithi give chase, and this time there is no ruse, no controlled countercharge. By sunset, the great host assembled by Scarus Abnalajan is routed, their war camp raided, its pavilions plundered. In the coming weeks, thousands of dead horses are found along the roads leading south, ridden to death by Kine masters desperate to escape the licentious fury of the men of the Tusk.